folks, I'm Sean Crabtree.
And I'm Cameron Bailey.
Welcome into Growth Profits.
Coming to you live each week.
We don't want to change the way you do business.
We want to change the way you're thinking about your business.
We want you to have better results, happier clients, and make more money.
Let's get it started. Hey guys, welcome to Dental Profits. On this week, we're going to talk about milking your own cows. How you don't have to go out there and chase and spend dollars on trying to get somebody else's cows when you got cows in your own barn that are not being milked.
We'll give you 3 steps that you can take away to make an immediate impact on your active patient base. It's all about milking your own cows.
Let's get started.
And welcome into Dental Profits, where we come to you live each week just outside our studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Did I say that right?
Just outside of Nashville,
in
Tennessee.
Our studios, right. Just
Winchester,
outside of
Tennessee.
Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome into Dental Profits. This is the show where we come to you live each week talking about the business of your business. It's about you having happier clients, better results, making more money, and enjoying the ride. I'm really excited. I'm Sean Crabtree. I'm your host.
I'm Cameron Bailey.
Along with my business partner here, Cameron Bailey. And I think we are actually live, but we just have one camera, right?
One camera going live. Going live.
So we want to talk to you today about the number one most often overlooked biggest money maker in your practice. And as many of you know, we are very intellectual. We are extremely heady in our conversations. The title of this podcast is Milk Your Own Cows. We should have a big moo right here.
You don't have to go get cows out of somebody else's barn when you're not milking the cows that you got in your barn. A lot of times we're often trying to go find new cows when we don't even really dive in too deep into the cows that we already have. And
that's one of the things that we hear most often. And if you're listening to this, if you are a dentist, if you work in a dental office, if you're in the dental industry, then you hear it most often too. Everybody's concerned about new patients, but very few people are concerned about the past relationships that they have. And so when we talk about milking your own cows, it's a mindset and it's a way of thinking. This is based on a presentation that I did a couple of years ago at Chicago Midwinter. Only because I thought it would be fun to go in Chicago and talk about milking your own cows.
I think they have a cow in the zoo at Chicago.
Right,
they do have a cow in the zoo in New York at the New York City Zoo. There's a bull in the zoo, like it's an exotic animal.
But we're from Tennessee, and so we see cows all over the place.
That's right.
But the conversation rings true. Instead of worrying about going to get new patients or robbing cows from somebody else's barn or creating some getting some wild cows herded in, take a look at your barn, because you probably got a whole bunch of cows that are sitting around just waiting to be milked. And more often than not, we find that is consistently the case. It is not unusual for us to walk into your practice and do the research and examine what's going on and find that you got $1 million sitting out there in relationships. So when we talk about milking your own cows, we want to give you 3 tips to take away to be able to maximize this conversation. But to dive into it, if we're really going to milk your own cows, then you got to look at this scenario, right? We're talking about past relationships. We're talking about patients who have not been in your practice for a period of time. Level.
Yeah, but they've seen your face, they've seen your logo, they've seen your team, they've seen your building, they've been on the premises. It's not like it's a cold relationship.
They have relationship somehow, some way.
Milking your own cows is all about engaging your patients, right? Patient engagement. That's the most important thing.
If we are going to milk our own cows, then let's first of all, if you're listening to this, there's a couple things that you're thinking right now. You're probably thinking, number one, you're right, man. I got a big truckload of opportunity sitting in my software system with accounts that need to be reinstated back in active status, or if you're not, if you've not completely converted to digital, then you've got some charts and whatnot back there that need to be reinstated. So that's probably the number one thing you're thinking. Number two thing you're thinking is, who in the world has got time to spend on reinstatement?
That's
right?
the number one excuse. The number one excuse is, Sean, that's a good idea. That's cool. But man, I ain't got no time for that. We ain't got no time. Mm-hmm. You don't understand. We got 4 chairs going. The phone's ringing off the hook. I got this and that and this and that. I got no time to milk my own cows.
And what we would tell you is, you don't have time to ignore this conversation. Again, these are patients that you have on some level, some kind of relationship with, and they are, there for the taking if you will reach out to them. It may not seem like you have time, but your alternative is to spend dollars and time on creating new relationships that you have absolutely zero touch with up to this point. So why not maximize the cows that you have in your barn before you go searching for new ones? So 2 or 3 things that we would tell you.
Step one is you got to determine the goal. What is the goal? What is the goal? The goal has got to be a number.
Let's assume that for this conversation that we're talking about hygiene reinstatement. There's no doubt that you have a lot of reinstatement out there that needs to happen in terms of operative, either in
treatment.
It's diagnosed, but it's not been started. It's started, but it's not been completed.
It's been phased. We got the first phase done, but they haven't come back for the second or the third or the fourth phase.
Right. And so, but for right now, for this conversation, we're going to assume that all of those need to come back through hygiene. And so when you're talking about determining what your goal is, how would you do that?
If it were
By the way, it has to be a number.
Yeah, a goal's got to be a number. It's got to be a number of dollars, a number of patients, because it's that way. It's trackable, right?
Measurable.
If I just say, hey, my goal is I want to do better, right? But I have no way to track it. Then how do I know when I'm doing better? So step one is determine what the goal is.
And if you're talking about hygiene, here's a quick way to do that. And let's talk about it from both scenarios, okay? We've got, let's say we've got a situation where your practice is totally converted to digital. Okay, if your practice is totally converted to digital,
no patient charts at all,
everything is in the system, then rather than simply operating on an unscheduled treatment, which you could go right there and look for the opportunity. Who is due to come in that's not scheduled? You might also want to go in and just look at the accounts. A lot of times what we find is the information is not really as up to date as it could be. So a systematic approach, A to Z, walking through the accounts will really help. If you're not totally converted to digital, then going back and honestly, I know what you're thinking. Dude, sounds like a lot of work. It's not work. It's opportunity. It's opportunity. Opportunity.
Working on your business versus just being stuck working in your business, guys. We're trying to grow dental profits, man. We're trying to get you happier, making more money. And in order to do those things, sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone and maybe think of things a little bit differently. If the number one excuse is I don't have time, you got to make time. If the number 2 excuse is, man, that sounds difficult, how am I going to find that opportunity?
You got to simplify that.
You got to dive into it.
And
you got to dive into it.
Simplify that. It's all about milking your own cows. It's about maximizing that opportunity. Again, it doesn't make any sense for you to go spend time, money, and energy after cows that you have no relationship with when you got a barn full of them that are just waiting to be milked. So in determining your goal, here's what I do. This is number 1, determine your goal. Jump out there and figure out what is your active patient base. Okay, your system's going to if you're totally converted digital, it's going to automatically revert to either 18 or 24 months. We'd say 24 months. If you want to do 18, just dive in. Figure out what your active number is, and then figure out how many that you've actually seen.
How many patients have you been in front of, just to clarify, how many patients have you been in front of in the last 24 months? Have been in your practice in the last 24 months?
And that would be your active patients. And then figure out how many you've actually seen. So let's take this as an example. If you've seen if your active patient number, just say 1,000. If your active patient base is 1,000 according to your software, then let's figure conservatively. If perio didn't exist, you could see those patients twice a year. If perio didn't exist, conservatively, you could see them twice a year. So if you had 1,000, then in a year you technically could see 2,000. Right. So then go back and figure out how many you did see. Now you know
what
your opportunity versus what you did see, and then set a goal. Right. That goal should be a certain number, so that, like Cameron says, so you can measure it. Now you can go back. If you say, hey, I would like to be at 80% of my active patients. I'd like to have 80% of my active patient base come to see me on a regular preventative maintenance basis.
That's the number one question I ask with a new client that we start working with.
Mm-hmm.
I ask them, what percentage are you okay not seeing in your hygiene program, right? What percentage are you going to be okay with? Are you okay with 50%? On a recall basis not showing up? Are you okay with 40%, 30%?
Whatever that number is, multiply that times.
They generally say, I would be okay with 90%. I'd be okay if 10%, because 10% you got, things that happen, but I'd be okay with 90%. But when we look at these numbers, it's not going to be 90%.
No.
It's going to be
30 to 40 generally.
30 to 40.
Generally speaking. So, number one, determine your goal. Because it's all about milking your own cows versus going to find new cows. Number one, determine your goal. Again, if you got 1,000 patients, let's say, then theoretically you could have 2,000 visits. In a year, how many did you actually have versus how many could you have? Now you've got a goal, right? Simple enough.
Number two,
and this is the big one.
This is where the magic happens, as they say.
and we need to go in depth on this. Number 2 step is this. You got to engage the patient on the phone. And I know if you're listening to this and you're going, dude, we've got this automated patient thing. We've got,
I'm spending all this money to have these computers call my patients and text my patients and email my patients.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, Cameron and I talk about this all the time, and we spent, I think it was number 17 podcast, right, where we talked about stop selling dentistry, start selling value. It's all about value. If we're talking about number 2, engaging the patient on the phone so you can milk your own cows, think about why this is important. If the patient is not in your practice, there's all kinds of justifications and reason why in the patient's mind. But at the end of the day, what you know after listening to us and watching us is the real reason they're not in is because they don't see value. They don't see value in you. They don't see value in the dentistry. They don't see value in your team, whatever. They're not seeing value. So we know they're not in because they're not seeing value. So the question is, if you leave them a digital message or if you have an automated thing reach out, what are the chances that that patient is now going to stop and say, I see value, right? The chances are probably pretty low. So you want to engage the patient over the phone, human to human contact, because that's the only way that you can ask questions and create value.
Those tools are great tools. The emails, the texts, they're great tools. But what we're talking about...
They're not a total strategy, though.
They're not a total strategy. They're not... the number one thing we're talking about here is patient engagement, right? You got to be thinking to yourself...
Human to human.
Yes.
It's got to be human to human.
You got to engage me, right? I'm not in your practice for one reason and one reason alone. That's because I don't see value. How are you going to engage me to be able to get me in the door to create that value, right? It's probably not going to be, hey, if you get a chance, give us a call on a text message or some type of verbiage like that. It's going to be, hey, I got to engage you. I got to get to what your objection is. I know it's value.
So let me tell you a quick story.
Okay, please.
We travel a lot. Cameron and I travel a ridiculous amount of time in a given year. I don't know how many hundreds of days. I added it up one time years ago, and it was about 205. I don't know where it is now, but we travel a lot. And so traveling as much as we do, a lot of times we'll make relationships with drivers because a lot of times that's the best way to go. There's certain airport regulations and so forth, and that's happening more and more. So we've got relationships with drivers quite a bit.
So we try to find somebody that can drive us in an area, and we stick with that person.
And we stick with that person. We made a relationship with that person. So we have a driver in Chicago, and his name's Andy, and I can't pronounce his last name, but Andy's a good guy. We have a great relationship with Andy. We've used him for several years.
Yeah, been driving
several years. We've used him.
So he picked me up one time. Just a little customer service advice for you guys. He picked me up one time and drove me to Indiana.
From Chicago.
From Chicago. Picked me up and drove me to Indiana a few hours away, and then came back and picked me up the next day. I mean, the guy is...
Andy's on the spot.
He's willing to do whatever it takes.
And so Andy, as a driver, understands this concept of milking your own cows. He understands the value of marketing versus milking the cows that you got relationships with. It had been, I guess it was the end of last year, it had been a couple of months since we'd been to Chicago. And Sandra here at our office got a call from none other than Andy. And Andy's question was this: hey, just want to make sure everything's okay. I haven't heard from you guys in a while, and I was concerned. Great way to open a conversation. What is Andy trying to do?
He's trying to reinstate us back in an active status.
He's trying to milk his own cows. He is trying to milk his own cows because he understands. And so whether you're in dentistry, whether whatever the service business you're in, the relationships that you have are always going to be more valuable than the relationships that you have yet to create. It's all about milking your own cows. Number 2 thing we're talking about here is engaging the patient on the phone. You have to have a systematic approach. We've had offices do this all kinds of different ways, but you have to have a systematic approach to it. Not only a systematic approach in terms of the call, but you have to have a systematic approach in terms of the process of who's making the calls, when you're going to make the calls, how you're going to make the calls, who's going to, all that sort of stuff. So we would challenge you to come up with a plan. Don't just, hey, here's my goal, and jump out there and start calling, right? Come up with a systematic, strategic approach. Remember,
and the number one thing is don't go into your plan and say, hey, if you have time, we need to make some calls.
So you're thinking, okay, so how do you do that, right? How do you, what is the best strategic way to engage the patient on the phone? We've had guys do it all kinds of different ways. We've got offices that they'll divide their team into smaller teams, right? And everybody takes a portion of the alphabet. We'll have, where everybody has an individual section of the alphabet. And what they're doing is they're in charge of that section of the alphabet. So each person is diving into the accounts or the charts, depending on your office. And they're sort of walking through each of those accounts or files to figure out if indeed this person needs to be reinstated back into our practice. And if the answer is yes, great. I'm going to have personal information about that person. I'm going to write that information down, and then I'm going to engage the patient on the phone. That's the way you do it from a systematic standpoint. What about from an actual call standpoint? Hey, let's role play it.
Okay, we will.
So here's the way.
Step one, determine the goal. Step 2,
engage the patient
on the phone and figure out, like Sean said, you're looking at the account to find out who I'm dealing with, so that when I call Sean Crabtree, I know what I need to know about Sean Crabtree, right? I've got this information in front of me. I know the real reason I'm calling. I know if there's anybody else in his family that needs to come in. I know the situation.
I know some personal information about that patient.
I know that
they like to play golf or whatever.
What his outstanding treatment is. I know who I'm dealing with, right?
So let's say on one hand we got Sally. And Sally is what we would call very tactical, right? Sally has a list of patients to call. Her goal is to get through the list.
She's got 100 patients, and she wants to call 100 patients. She's just dialing. Boom.
Dialing for dollars.
Boom. Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean, do you want to come back and see us? Hey, Sean, do you want to come back and see us?
And unfortunately, the way Sally does that, in that example, that's what we hear a whole lot. What's the issue with engaging the patient like that on the phone? Because we're in number 2 here for milking your own cows. Engaging the patient on the phone. That's the way Sally approaches it. Sally picks up the phone and dials a number, and all she knows is she's talking to Cameron on the other end.
Yeah.
And it goes something like this. You ready?
Yes.
Ring, ring.
Hello?
Is this Cameron?
It is Cameron.
Hi, Cameron. This is Sally, and I'm calling from Dr. Feelgood's office. And we were just going through some records, and we determined that it had been quite some time since you've been in. And so I was calling to see if you'd like to schedule for your cleaning.
I don't have my calendar in front of you, and I've been real busy. I'll have to call you back.
And that is what you get most of the time. And Sally goes, okay.
Okay.
And calls the next person, right? Versus
Well,
Julie.
the question is, does Sally engage me?
And
No.
the answer is no.
No. She did not engage me.
Sally asked a close-ended question.
Yeah. The way you engage people
Do
is
you
ask-
want to schedule? I was wondering if you'd like to schedule. Do you want to schedule?
The way you engage people is you ask open-ended questions so that Sean, in my example, has to give me an answer. Right? He has to take ownership of the situation.
So Julie understands the concepts of where she's trying to go. She knows that engaging the patient on the phone is her number one goal. She's not going to ask a close-ended question. She's not going to ask a question that starts with, do you, did you, are you, will you, won't you, could you, should you, have you, etc.
Right.
She's going to ask, or as best she can, eliminate those close-ended and leave it open. So how might that go? You gonna be the patient? Or you
I'll be
gonna
the
person.
I'll be the patient.
You
Or
be
you,
the
I'll do you. Don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a lot going on here, do we? Okay, you want to be patient?
I'll be the patient.
Ring, ring.
Hello.
Is this Cameron?
This is Cameron.
Cameron, this is Sal. This is Julie. Cameron, this is Julie. I'm calling from Dr. Allgood's office. And did you realize, Cameron, we haven't seen you in 24 months. Dr. Allgood is concerned.
So if he puts
And
me in that
that's leaving
position,
it open-ended.
if he puts me in that position, I have to give him an excuse at that point. I have to give him an answer. Right? I can't say, "Oh, I'll have to call you back." I can't say, "Don't call me, I'll call you."
Anything's possible.
It's possible.
I mean, anything's possible, but the patient would have to, like, it would be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you do it that way, you've left it open-ended, and now the patient has to respond, and now you've got the opportunity to overcome that and get the patient scheduled. So number one, determine your goal. You have a number that you're trying to hit for the year. You've broken that down for the month. You've broken it down for the week. You're clear based on what your opportunity is versus how many patients you've already seen. You have a number you're trying to do. Now you've implemented a plan. Number two.
To engage the patient, you're asking open-ended.
phone.
Yeah, you're engaging the patient. You're asking open-ended questions to overcome the objections. Number 3 step, you got to track it. You got to track what's working and what's not.
Now,
how would you track it?
One of the biggest. This is the biggest challenges we see moving on this situation is. First of all, people don't realize the opportunity of milking your own cows, so they just go after new patients all the time. Number two, they might go as far as setting a goal, but they don't have a strategic approach like we just talked about where you're engaging the patient on the phone. And number three, they don't have a tracking, or the tracking is very basic. So it's this patient was called at this time, did not schedule, or did schedule. You want to know the details of that. You want to know how many calls you made, how many patients you actually spoke to. You want to know how many of the ones that you actually spoke to did you get on the phone or did you actually get scheduled, right? With that information, you know very quickly that there's really, if you're tracking at that level, you know there's only, if you have a challenge and you're not getting patients in the door, then there's only 2 or 3 reasons why that would be the case, right?
Right. There's only a few opportunities. Either number one, I'm not calling enough people. Right. If I make 3 phone calls today and nobody answers the phone, I didn't call enough people. Right. It's a numbers game. So number one, I didn't call enough people. Number 2, I called enough people, but I didn't call at the right times to engage them.
Possibly. So you didn't get a hold of enough people.
Didn't talk.
You
to
made the attempt, but you didn't actually talk to them.
Yeah, I called 35 people and I got nobody. So maybe I need to look at the times I'm calling. I didn't talk to enough people.
Right.
Number 3, I called enough people. I talked to enough people, but I'm not engaging them with my verbiage to make them give me the objection, to make them so that I can overcome them. I'm not asking open-ended questions so that they're understanding that they have to give me the objection so that I can overcome it.
So if you're hearing this, you're going, good grief. You guys are telling me that we got to get on the phone, we got to get a hold of these patients, and we got to track the details. How many calls we're making, how many people we're getting a hold of, and how many people we're getting scheduled.
I'm not telling you have to. I'm just saying if you want to engage your patients.
If you want to maximize your opportunity, then yes, that's exactly what we're telling you, and that is time well spent. Remember, these are cows that are already have at least visited your barn. They're your cows. Why in the world would you go spend time, money, effort, and energy on making new relationships when you have relationships already established that you're not utilizing? So yes, you need to make the time. It's that important. And I'd be willing to bet you have $1 million sitting out there in this opportunity.
I'm sure. Right? I mean, right now we're just talking about, think about it this way, guys. Right now we're just talking about hygiene reinstatement. Bringing them back in the door for a hygiene appointment.
Right.
What do you think that's going to do to your operative department?
Right. You're increasing your opportunities.
Goodness.
And these are patients who have not been in a while, so the chances that they're going to need work are much higher.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that tracking, yes, you need to know that information so you can know, hey, what's the issue? Are we not calling enough people? In which case, there's an answer for that. Or are we not calling at the right times? In which case, there's an answer for that. Or is our verbiage not working? In which case, there's an answer. But if you don't have that tracking, you don't know which one of those answers you need to be able to get a better result. Right?
I agree, man.
So, if you are committed to milking your own cows, what we're talking about here is determine the goal. And again, go look at the active patients that you have, how many you've actually seen in hygiene, and what measure that against your opportunity. Set that as a goal. Break that goal down into a monthly, even a daily, and even a per person or little teams like we talked about. Now you have a goal that you're shooting for. Create a systematic plan like we talked about. Who's going to be in charge? How specifically are you going to be calling? Who's in charge of what letters and so forth? Engage the patient on the phone. Remember,
open-ended questions.
Automated or digital opportunities do not give you the ability to ask questions and create value. And what you already know is if the patient's not there, it's because they're not seeing value. So determine the goal, create a systematic approach to engage the patient on the phone. And number 3,
track it so you know what's working and what's not and what knobs you need to change.
And track it at a very high level so that you know that information. I mean, this is the number one opportunity that you have in your practice.
I guarantee you, when you guys look into your numbers and you look at your active patients and then you look at how many patients you've actually seen over the last 6 months, it's going to blow your mind. And it's simply, we're just not engaging them. Go out there and engage those patients.
Remember, don't spend time trying to milk cows in somebody else's barn. Don't spend time trying to go create new relationships with cows that you haven't met yet when you got a barn full of cows that you've not yet milked. Right, Casey? Find us on thecrabtreegroup.com. Go hit the YouTube button, hit subscribe so that every video we cut will go directly to your inbox. I want to thank you for joining us on Dental Profits. It's all about the business of your business. Milking your own cows, right? It's about you having better results, happier clients, making more money, and enjoying the ride. And that's what we want for you, is to go out there and milk your own cows. Have a good week.
Have a good week, guys.
See you next week.